I hope those brats had disappeared with their mother. The words sliced through the mansion's kitchen like broken glass, sharp, poisonous, unreal. Hidden in a narrow service hallway, Adrian Vale stopped breathing. Everyone believed he was already halfway across the Atlantic on a private jet to London. Even his fiancée, Selina Marlowe, had waved sweetly at the driveway, playing the perfect future stepmother. But a knot in Adrian's gut, one he couldn't explain, had dragged him back home in silence through the staff entrance like a stranger in his own life. Now, through a cracked door, he watched Selina's face twist into something he'd never seen on magazine covers. She stood in a sleek red dress, holding a crystal glass like a weapon, advancing on Monique Carter, the black housekeeper, who had raised Adrian, and who now stood trembling but unbroken between Selina and the 3-year-old twins Noah and Eli, clinging to her apron like it was a life raft. "Please, ma'am," Monique pleaded, voice shaking not for herself, but for the boys. "They're just babies, you're scaring them." "Shut up, you useless servant," Selina hissed, eyes glittering with cruelty. "I'm tired of their crying, tired of their cheap powder smell, they ruin everything." The twins sobbed harder. One buried his face against Monique's uniform's small shoulders, quaking. Adrian's hands curled into fists so tight his nails dug into his palms. He had returned to confirm a fear. Instead, he'd stumbled into a nightmare, one that proved his second chance in love might be the most dangerous mistake of his life. The moment Adrian's footsteps faded from the driveway, the transformation was instant, violent in its speed. Selina Marlowe's sweet smile collapsed like a mask torn from her face. She shut the front door with a sharp click, then slowly turned toward the kitchen, her heels echoing with authority. "Pick up that mess," she snapped, her voice flat and cold. "And get those children out of my sight. I don't want them in the living room today." Monique Carter stiffened. She had heard that tone before. Quiet, controlled, dangerous. The twins Noah and Eli sensed it too. They stopped playing, eyes wide instinctively, pressing closer to her legs. "Ma'am," Monique said carefully. "They're just playing. Adrian. Adrian isn't here," Selina cut in, her eyes flashing. "And while he's gone, this house runs my way." She strode forward and kicked a stuffed bear across the marble floor, the last gift their late mother had given them. "This place looks like a cheap daycare," she sneered. "Beg all of it. Toys, blankets, whatever trash they've dragged in here." The boys began to cry. Eli reached for the bear, his small hand trembling. Selina laughed, short, humorless. "God, that sound," she muttered. "I'm sick of it. Sick of pretending I care." From the shadows, Adrian felt his stomach twist. This was not stress. This was not a bad day. This was hatred, raw and unapologetic. Monique stepped in front of the twins. "Please," she said, her voice breaking, but her body firm. "They're children." Selina leaned in close, her whisper venomous. "And you're replaceable. Remember that." She straightened, smoothing her dress as if nothing had happened. "Take them to the kitchen. Feed them later. If I hear another cry, you'll regret it." As Selina walked away, already tapping on her phone, Adrian understood with terrifying clarity the woman he planned to marry did not tolerate his children. She despised them, and the lie he had been living inside was far darker than he'd ever imagined. Monique Carter lowered herself to the kitchen floor the moment Selina disappeared, gathering Noah and Eli into her arms, as if her body alone could shield them from the world. Their sobs soaked into her uniform. She rocked them gently, humming an old gospel tune her own mother used to sing when storms rattled the windows of a cramped South Side apartment decades ago. "It's okay, babies," she whispered, though her hands trembled. "Nana's got you." Monique had been in that house longer than the marble floors, longer than the security system, longer than Selina's polished smile. She had raised Adrian when his own mother died, taught him how to tie his shoes, wiped his tears when wealth couldn't. And when fate took his wife too soon, it was Monique who learned how to warm bottles again at 60, who memorized bedtime rituals, who became the steady heartbeat in 2 fragile lives. She knew engines of routine the way other people knew luxury. when Noah needed food before tears turned to panic, when Eli went quiet, because fear had already settled too deep. She knew the difference between a tantrum and terror, and what she saw now was terror. On the counter sat the twins' lunch prepared hours earlier. Fresh food. Waiting. Monique glanced toward the hallway, listening for heels, then made a decision born of love, not permission. She fed them slowly, carefully, wiping their faces, kissing their curls. "Your daddy loves you," she murmured. "He just doesn't see yet." From the hidden hallway, Adrian watched her move with quiet authority. No bitterness, no complaint. Just devotion. While the woman he trusted wielded cruelty like power, Monique wielded patience like grace. That was when the truth settled heavy in his chest. The real mother figure in his children's lives did not wear silk or diamonds. She wore worn shoes, aching knees, and a courage that asked for nothing in return. And if she was afraid, she carried that fear alone, so the children wouldn't have to. Adrian felt shame burn behind his eyes, because while he had been searching for love to save himself, Monique had been standing guard, saving what mattered most without ever being asked. Adrian Vale stayed hidden, but something inside him began to unravel. As Selena's footsteps faded upstairs, the mansion felt suddenly hollow, too large, too quiet, like a stage after the audience has left. Adrian pressed his back against the wall, his chest tight, his mind spiraling, every word he had just heard replayed with brutal clarity. Replaceable. Trash. Pretending I care. A memory rose uninvited, a hospital room bathed in pale light, the steady beep of a monitor, his late wife's hand slipping from his as she whispered, "Promise me you'll protect them." He had nodded, then tears blurring his vision, believing love alone would be enough. But love, he was learning, could be dangerously blinding. He watched Monique Carter lift Noah into her arms, murmuring reassurance, her voice low and steady, despite the fear etched into her face. She moved with instinct, with a kind of practiced bravery that came from years of choosing others over herself. Adrian saw it clearly now, the way she positioned her body between the children and the door, the way she listened for danger even while comforting them. And then he remembered something else, the faint bruises he had noticed the day before on Noah's arm. How Monique had gone quiet when he asked. How Selena had intervened smoothly, redirecting blame-wrapping concern in sweetness. At the time, Adrian had wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. Because believing meant he didn't have to face the possibility that he had brought a monster into his home. His stomach turned. This wasn't impatience, it wasn't jealousy, it was calculation. Selena hadn't just disliked the twins, she resented them. They were obstacles, reminders, loose ends that didn't fit the future she was carefully constructing. And Monique, strong, loyal, deeply loved by the children, was the one thing Selena could never fully control. That was when Adrian understood the truth with terrifying clarity. This wasn't about discipline. It wasn't about adjustment. It was about removal. And if he didn't act not tomorrow, not later, but now, his silence would become complicity. Hidden in the shadows, Adrian clenched his jaw and made a decision that would shatter the illusion of his perfect second chance. He would stop reacting. He would start watching. And when the truth was fully exposed, no mask, no matter how beautiful, would survive. The realization hardened into resolve. Adrian didn't rush out. He didn't confront her. He forced himself to stay still, to think past the fury burning in his chest. Rage would give Selena exactly what she needed, a story where she became the victim. No. If he was going to protect his children, he needed truth that couldn't be twisted. That night, while Selena slept curled beside him, breathing soft and satisfied, Adrian lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every tender word she had ever spoken now felt rehearsed. Every smile, strategic. At 3 a.m, he slipped from the bed, careful not to wake her, and walked into his study like a man entering a confessional. From a locked case, he removed equipment he had once used for corporate security audits. Pin-sized cameras, high-definition, silent, precise. Tools meant to expose fraud. He never imagined he'd use them in his own home. Before dawn, the house was wired. The kitchen, the living room, the hallway near the service quarters. Not to spy, but to protect. The next morning, Adrian played his role perfectly. At the front door, Selena clung to him, lips curved into that flawless smile. "I'll take care of everything," she said sweetly. "The boys will miss you." He knelt, hugged Noah and Eli, tightly breathing them in, as if committing their warmth to memory. Then he looked at Monique Carter, holding her gaze longer than usual. "Guard them with your life," he said quietly. Her eyes widened just slightly. She understood. The car pulled away. The gate closed. And within minutes, Adrian was no longer leaving for the airport. He was seated in the guest house, headphones on, heart pounding as the live feed flickered to life. What he saw in the first 10 minutes stole the air from his lungs. Selena's smile vanished the instant the door shut. Her posture changed. Her voice dropped into something cold and sharp. Orders followed. Insults, control. Adrian stared at the screen, nausea rising. He hadn't just left his children with someone cruel. He had left them in the hands of a predator. And now, hidden behind glass and wires, he would witness everything, no matter how much it hurt. Because only the full truth would be strong enough to end this, for good. The truth arrived minute by minute, and each one cut deeper than the last. From the quiet safety of the guest house, Adrian watched the screens as if they were windows into hell. Selena moved through the house with a confidence that now made his skin crawl, issuing commands, stripping away tenderness, enforcing silence like law. The cameras didn't blink. They didn't look away. They recorded everything Adrian had once refused to see. He saw her shove the twins' toys into black garbage bags, mocking their tears. He saw her deny them food, glance at the clock, and decide hunger was more convenient than compassion. He saw Monique Carter stand her ground, trembling, but unbroken, absorbing insults meant to crush her dignity so the boys wouldn't have to. Then came the moment that nearly broke him. The camera in the service hallway captured Selena dragging Noah and Eli toward a small, windowless storage room. Their screams pierced through Adrian's headphones, raw, panicked, calling for a father who wasn't there. He shot to his feet, chair clattering behind him, every instinct screaming to run. But he stopped, because running now would end the moment but not the threat. He watched Selena lock the door. He watched Monique throw herself in front of it, begging, pleading, her voice cracking with terror. He watched Selena strike her once hard, and then smile as if cruelty were a private luxury she'd waited too long to enjoy. Adrian's vision blurred with rage. His hands shook violently. This wasn't discipline. This wasn't stress. This was abuse, and then worse. The living room camera captured Selena on the phone later that evening, wine glass in hand, laughing, talking about Swiss boarding schools, about paperwork, about how easily Adrian could be manipulated with guilt, about getting rid of Monique once and for all. No one would believe her anyway. Every word was recorded, every lie, every plan, every confession. Adrian sank back into his chair, something inside him going terrifyingly still. The man who had once doubted himself was gone. In his place stood a father who finally understood the cost of hesitation. He reached for his keys. No more waiting, no more watching. The evidence was complete. The mask was shattered. And now it was time to come home. Not as a fiancé, not as a negotiator, but as a father who would never again arrive too late. The door didn't open. It exploded. The sound ripped through the mansion like thunder, wood slamming against marble glass, trembling in its frames. Selena froze mid-motion, her hand raised, her face twisted in rage, caught between cruelty and shock. Adrian Vale stood in the doorway, not the man who had left that morning in a tailored suit and quiet trust. This Adrian was breathless, shirt, wrinkled eyes burning with something far more dangerous than anger clarity. "Step away from them," he said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Monique Carter was on the floor, blood at the corner of her mouth. Her body curved protectively around Noah and Eli. The boys were shaking their fingers locked into her clothes, as if letting go meant disappearing forever. Selina recovered fast. She always did. "Thank God you're back," she sobbed instantly, dropping her voice into practiced terror. "She attacked me. She tried to steal my jewelry. She's dangerous, Adrian. Look." She pointed wildly at Monique's apron pocket. Adrian didn't even glance. "I know," he said calmly. "I watched you put it there." The color drained from Selina's face. He stepped forward past her, knelt down, and pulled his sons into his arms. They clung to him, crying into his chest, their bodies still rigid with fear. Only then did he look up. "I saw everything," Adrian continued. "The hunger, the threats, the lock, the slap, the phone call, Switzerland, your lover, your plan." Selina backed away, shaking her head, searching desperately for an angle, a crack. "You're mistaken. The camera's context matters. Be quiet." The word landed like a verdict. "You abused my children," Adrian said. "You assaulted a woman who raised me. You tried to frame her for a crime. This isn't a breakup, Selina. This is accountability." Security arrived minutes later, called by Adrian, not her. The footage was already backed up, duplicated, time-stamped. Lawyers were notified, authorities informed. Selina screamed when she realized there was no escape. Threats turned to begging. Begging turned to silence. She was escorted out of the house she thought she owned. The mansion went still. Adrian helped Monique to her feet, his hands gentle, reverent. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. "I should have seen sooner." She shook her head, tears streaming. "You came back. That's what matters." That night, justice didn't roar. It stood firm, and for the first time since his wife died, Adrian knew this truth with absolute certainty. Cruelty survives on secrecy, but once exposed, it collapses under its own weight. The house did not feel victorious after Selina was gone. It felt wounded. Silence settled into the halls like dust after a storm, heavy, revealing impossible to ignore. Adrian Vale stood in the kitchen long after the doors closed behind the guards, his hands resting on the counter, his head bowed. The man who had confronted cruelty with evidence now faced something far harder, guilt. He turned to Monique Carter. She was sitting at this table, an ice pack pressed gently to her cheek, her shoulders still tense, as if expecting another blow. She looked smaller than she had hours ago, not weaker, but exhausted in a way only long-suffering courage can be. "I failed you," Adrian said quietly. His voice cracked on the word. "I brought danger into this house. I asked you to protect my children when that was my job. That." Monique lifted her eyes. They were tired but steady. "You came back," she said softly. "A lot of children don't get that." Adrian knelt in front of her, then fully deliberately uncaring of the marble floor or his stained clothes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For every moment you were afraid. For every time you stayed silent so I could stay happy." Monique's hands trembled as she reached out not to accept his apology, but to forgive him. "We do what we can with what we know," she said. "Now you know. Now you." Upstairs, Noah and Eli slept fitfully curled together, their nightmares shallow but persistent. Adrian would sit beside their beds night after night, refusing to leave, proving with his presence what words could not yet repair. He learned the language of healing slowly, consistency, patience, showing up again and again. And Monique, she was no longer invisible. Adrian changed the locks, then the rules, then the future. Monique was offered retirement, but not exile. A room with sunlight, medical care, authority in the house that matched the love she had already given. "You are not staff," Adrian told her firmly. "You are family." It took time for her to believe him, but belief came in small moments. In laughter returning to the dinner table, in the twins reaching for her without fear, in Adrian finally listening instead of assuming. The house began to breathe again. Not perfect, not pristine, but honest, and in that honesty something stronger than wealth took root. A family rebuilt not on appearances, but on truth, accountability, and the courage to protect the vulnerable at all costs. The healing did not arrive all at once. It came quietly in ordinary moments. Morning light through the kitchen window, Noah laughing again, Eli sleeping through the night without crying. Adrian Vale learned that redemption was not a speech or a grand gesture. It was presence. He stayed. He listened. He showed up when it was inconvenient, when it was uncomfortable, when it reminded him of his own failure. Monique Carter remained at the heart of the home, not as a servant, but as its anchor. The twins clung to her with trust that had survived fear, and Adrian, changed by what he nearly lost, finally understood that love is proven not by intention, but by action taken in time. One evening, as he watched his sons fall asleep safe, peaceful Adrian whispered a promise into the quiet room. I will never choose comfort over courage again, because the most dangerous mistakes are not made by evil people, but by good people who look away too long. Never ignore your instincts when something feels wrong. Never dismiss the quiet bravery of those who protect without recognition. And never underestimate how much damage silence can do. If you are a parent, protect fiercely. If you are a witness, speak. If you have power, use it before regret becomes irreversible. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Have you ever had to choose between comfort and doing what was right? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that remind us real courage is choosing to act before it's too late. Because sometimes saving a life doesn't look heroic. It looks like finally paying attention.